Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review End of Days. So, this is a supernatural Arnold Schwarzenegger film, and I like I love supernatural movies, and so this is like an easy thumbs up win for me. And plus, also, I had seen the zombie movie that Arnold did called Maggie. So, if you want to see Arnold go on and fight zombies, check out the movie called Maggie. Very interesting. I think probably I'd went on and maybe mentioned this movie when I reviewed Maggie, so check that out. So, for a lot of people that may not be Arnold fans, what is this movie technically like? Well, I think immediately I would go on and basically say that this movie is The Golden Child. If you guys know the Eddie Murphy movie, The Golden Child, which is freaking hilarious if you've never seen it. Oh my god, still to this day, I will watch The Golden Child whenever and bust out laughing. It's freaking hilarious. So, if you've never watched both End of Days and Golden Child, you're missing out. So, and we'll get to the whole rigmarole of where to go to get this and see this for absolutely free. Believe me, I'll let you know. So, this movie, for a lot of people who are to have possibly gone on Stars and seen the show American Gods, because a lot of people had seen that show, because I would know. There is some kind of feels of American Gods in this movie, and when people are to go through it who have seen that show, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So, and also there's the devil in the show. There's also the devil in this movie. I mean, not the show, a movie. So immediately I have to go on and say that this is a good film. Weirdly, I know a lot of people will be like, wait a minute, this has something to do with the millennium and the year 2000. Isn't this a little outdated? Doesn't it not make sense? To me, when you go on, you kind of forget the whole millennium thing and that it's the year 2000. Everything else to me, still works with this film, because when you have the story at its nuts and bolts and its bare parts, it still works. It's still a good and interesting enough film, and really has a pretty decent amount of action in here, and has some weird and creepy things kind of going on within it. Just really keep my interest, to have me just go okay, there's some interesting things going on in here for this kind of story. So the interesting thing about it is Arnold Schwarzenegger is to be Jericho, and so Jericho is to go on and fight the devil in this movie. And the weird thing about this is Jericho is to be fighting the devil, and he doesn't really have faith in God. Because, of course, Jericho is to be shaken up by this past event that was to go on and take something away from him, that was to have him guilt-ridden and had given up on God and faith and whatever, and just decided to just do his own thing. To where now, when Jericho is forced back into this situation, they're like, well, hey, they're like, do you believe in God? And Jericho's like, they're like, well, maybe it's time to just kind of brush up. And Jericho's like, I don't know about that. It's like, really? He's like, yeah, I don't know about that. We'll see. Yeah. So for this story, they give us a lot of characters to really root for. We have Christine, who is to play this really innocent character here. We have, of course, Jericho, who is to have this very dark story where it seems like he's just kind of being this cop on the edge, or dangerous cop, and we have his partner that is getting very suspicious all the time of whether or not Jericho is to be wearing his bulletproof vest on, and also being very suspicious by the choices of his weird and goofy blended blending choices, let's just say, when especially this movie is to open up. And I'm like, oh my god, we have this guy who chucks like coffee in this blender, Pepto Bismol, pizza on the floor, Chinese food, and maybe like a banana that we don't know if is all that banana. Anyways, so gross. So like I've gone on and I've had like protein shakes or kind of like certain kind of protein to like kind of do before workouts and stuff. And that is a real taste that you kind of have to get used to, and it's just like but man, I could just imagine like the blended up garbage and then Jericho just like, yeah, breakfast of champions. I'm like, oh my god. But if anything, we get some very crazy things going on in this story. We get to see like the aftermath of some priest who was to go on and chop off his own tongue. We have also at one part of this story, like a guy having carvings a lot on his chest and is to be hung up on the ceiling, and like a lot of craziness going on into this. And plus also we have these hallucinations that are going on with Christine. And when Jericho is to finally meet up with Christine, Jericho is saying like, oh no, like I saw that hallucination too, like so you and me somehow are weirdly connected, bizarrely. So like it's all this like falling together, just like perfectly be synchronized, that these people are to be uh like prophesized to have this whole event just kind of come together, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so this movie is like, to me it's a good film. Like I enjoyed it. Just because I like supernatural movies, maybe you'll probably go on into this film and you may not like supernatural things, and you may not have eventually enjoyed this film at some point or whatever. But at the end of the day, end of days. So, where can you go on and see this movie? Because I don't feel like I've said that yet. So, I'm going to give you a free option, but I'm also going to give you the other side of the sword here. YouTube, Voodoos, and a number of kind of things you would go through a Google search. There's a $3.99 fee for some people that kind of have the ability to have this thing called money and want to go on rent a film. Go ahead. I enjoyed this movie. Maybe people will feel like that amount of money was worth going on renting it. I can't argue with you, but there also is a free option. So go on to a number of these things, which I'm going to recommend right now because I've used them fairly frequently, even at this point today, hours before going on watching this movie for free. So Google search. I want you to go ahead and Google search a app called Letter C Movies. That is a letter and then a word and then a word called app. You can go ahead and search for this, find this app, download it, be able to see whatever you want. Brand new releases. You can go on and see premium access stuff. You can go on and see, there in fact, movies and shows that you would have to go on a specific app to pay a certain fee to be able to see whatever the you want. So, there is that. There's another app called Fox HD Movies. When you search this word, because the title won't match of what I had just said here, but it won't matter. Just search for those words. Because of course you'll have a logo that'll say Fox HD Movies, but a title that'll say Play 1080p HD Movies. And by golly, if you search and you download both of those apps, you'll be able to see whatever you want to, anytime that you want to. And you'll be able to go through and watch anything for absolutely free. The only fee is if you decide that you would otherwise not want to watch certain things with apps being displayed, and then you could pay to avoid seeing these things called apps. You can also go onto a Google Play Store search and search the word TV Crush. And what will come on once you search these words in a Google Play Store will be an app that has a logo that says HD Movies with a little king crown off the side. You can go on and download this app and be able to see End of Days for absolutely free. You'll be able to see with subtitles, but really when it comes down to it, like I've gotten used to seeing a plethora of just things with subtitles to the point where I actually weirdly enough just watch a lot of movies with just and a lot of shows with just subtitles. There's sometimes where it feels like I can go on and like it feels like weird that I've gone on and just like relied on subtitles a lot to just watch certain shows or movies or whatever. And also it's kind of cool to like look down to just be like, what did they say here? Like there's sometimes where like it's all about pronunciation and coming up with, and like there's sometimes where I can kind of just jot something down for what they said, or I can even screenshot stuff at some points to just go on and be like, oh, okay, well I got like this is a previous reference for something that's going to be in the think tank when I go on into the later part of reviewing. So with that said, so yeah, let's just go into spoilers. I've talked about this movie long enough. It's basically like it's basically a chase film. Once it seems that Jericho is to finally find the girl that is to have been born and breaded to be made for Jericho to seduce, the chase begins. Where, of course, Jericho is trying to prevent the devil before midnight on New Year's Eve, before the millennium is to go on and start. And even Arnold is to make a kind of joke about this movie where it's like, well, hopefully it's Eastern Standard Time, like kind of the goofy kind of like when exactly is it to be uh, that like is it midnight for Central Time? What midnight are we talking about here? When is the world really going to be taken over? So so really that's what this movie is about. A woman that is to be prophesized to have been made to be seduced by the devil, and then the devil consumes this woman and is to have like hell on earth afterwards. So Jericho is just coming in to try to prevent that, as well as going on and realizing what the heck is going on, because he's just kind of following the bouncing ball of this crime because it's so odd and it's so unique. And so then Jericho is to lead this whole journey to make it to this girl, and then again like there's a whole like action sequences and there's a whole like race against time kind of thing going on here. And we consistently have it where Jericho is to have information that the devil needs to try and take from him and to try to figure out like where this girl actually is. So yeah. So with that said, let's just go into that double five because it's about that time. Let's just go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about the time you do spoil this movie. I apologize if there was a long stretch of a lead up and there was a lot to say at the end of the day of the beginning of this movie. End of days. End of the day. End of days. I didn't plan that at all, but it's been a while since I've said that anyways. So let's go into the beginning of this film. So the beginning of this film is to be the Vatican in 1989. So we have the Vatican, and we have some guy who's to kind of look at the alignment of this thing called the sky, and this all of a sudden is to lead some priest who is to grab this scroll and bust out the scroll out, and he's like, well, hey, like, I'm seeing the eye of God. So all of a sudden this priest goes on and is to speak with uh, this cardinal, I believe. And so, because I want to get this correct here, because I don't want to... Oh, Pope, my bad. Because normally I would assume it's just some cardinal or I don't know the priest order of things, but anyways, pushing on. So we have this priest that is scrambling to the Pope to correctly say this. And so now we have the guy who's saying, like, well, hey, like, prophecy is true about the whole, like, 1,000 years, and it seems that I'm going on and seeing the eye of God. And the Pope is going on and telling this priest here that's like, well, hey, like, well, if this girl does come to be, like, we are not going to try and kill her. We're just going to try and protect her. Like, we're going to try and save her from her fate. And, like, that's all that we can do. Like, we're not going to go on and, like, trying to stop this whole thing. We're just going to, like, see how this kind of plays out. So we now have this child that, of course, is being this thing called Born. So, not Born Ultimatum, just Born. So, we have a girl who is to have a birthmark because she's a baby. She's goo goo gagaing right now. She's a baby with this kind of weird horseshoe birthmark that she used to get right out of the womb. And so we have this doctor and these nurses who take this baby off and are now performing this ritual with this weird rattlesnake that they're cutting open, and they're putting blood into this baby. I'm like, this is so odd. Who just lets this happen in a hospital? What? Okay. So they go on and hand back off this woman's child, and they're asking her, like, well, hey, like, what is this girl's name? And this girl is to call this girl Christine. Isn't that a little coincidence? Because with the weird word or way that this girl's name is, her name is actually Kristen York. So in the later part of the movie, we have Christ in New York, or we have Christ York, and really, like, that's to be, like, so goofy. I guess we're probably thinking that Christine can technically, in some odd way, be Christ reborn. Is that what we're saying in this story? I don't know. Like, have it be, like, your own kind of thing. If you think that, then go along with that story. Or you can go on and just think that, no, this is just some random girl who has this birthmark, oddly. So, pushing on. So now, queuing up 20 years later, almost, and so we have it where Jericho is going on and taking this case. So Jericho is to just kind of wake up, just kind of on this couch. He probably had a long night of drinking and thinking and depressing himself. So Jericho is to have to go to work, and so Jericho is to be tempted to look at his gun, make sure that there's a bullet in the chamber, and so Jericho is to put his gun to his own temple. All of a sudden, we have Chicago, who is Jericho's partner here, which is kind of weird, because I think Jericho is an actual location, and now we have Chicago that is technically another location, because of course, like, Jericho, like, we do have that one show called Jericho, so, like, it's an actual, like, location, because hence why you have a show called Jericho at some point. And you also have a an AEW wrestler called Chris Jericho. My bad, because former WWE but also AEW wrestler Chris Jericho. I'm sure that's where they got the name from, right? Anyways, the guy lived in Jericho, I'm sure. No, probably not. Anyways, mood point. So Chicago is getting up Jericho, and this is where we have weird, goofy names here. So Jericho, of course, to get his weird, bizarrish concoction of food and or beverages all in this blender, and is to drink it. And Jericho is telling Chicago, it's like, hey, you want some? And Chicago's like, no. So we have Jericho getting the briefing of what they're going to go on and do. They're going to protect some Wall Street guy, and Jericho's like, well, like that's the thing that I like about guys who are probably jerks. They pay well. So we have Chicago that's giving Jericho like 5 minutes to just kind of get ready and get ready for work, and so they both go out, and so it's like, to me, it doesn't seem like these guys are actually working. It feels like they're working freelance. It feels like they have like some security business. It doesn't seem like they're actually police officers. But it also is to have them be working on a case alongside with uh, the the NYPD, because this is taking place in New York. Because I just had to realize that, because I'm like, oh yeah, New York, right? So, so one thing that I forgot to mention, and now I have to go on and get to, uh, the night before, we had two guys that were kind of construction guys, and they were doing some pressure readings on the sewer system. And it seems that the pressure from the sewers were getting completely out of control. To all of a sudden, we find out that there is to be a possible burst to make every single one of the sewer systems just, I guess, so hot that they are to burst into flame. So, conveniently, both of these construction workers make it out of here before this blast is to happen. And this blast to all of a sudden open some dimensional realm thing of sorts that is to have a thing that we are to naturally assume is the devil. It kind of looks more like a Ghostbuster monster of sorts, but still, we have this monsterish thing that is to be supposedly the devil, that is to make its way into some restaurant somewhere, where we have this Wall Street man that is going and having this dinner with this couple, and is to excuse himself so he can go on to the bathroom. So the devil is to go inside this Wall Street man and is to fling him all around this bathroom. Just chuck him all around, because why not? And so I'm like, wait a minute. Like, when you go on and you watch like the Conjuring movies, like, man, there is some doing for somebody to get possessed. Like, this just happens, like flinging a toss and a chucking around, and Bob's your uncle, the devil's inside somebody. But I guess, like, for this movie, it's the freaking devil. So, we have this Wall Street guy who is to now be the devil, and I'm going to call him that for the rest of this movie, because really, for the actual credits of this film, he's just called the Man. Anyways, so the devil goes on and is to immediately find some random woman and is to basically start touching her chest, let's just say, and is kissing this woman long and deep, to where this husband of this woman is like, hey, like get your hands out of my wife, kind of thing. And so the devil is kind of looking at him like, as if he's gonna have like red eyes and be like the gatekeeper or the keymaster from Ghostbusters, and just be like, it'd be like, God, what are the lines of which that Lewis was to say to that horse? Oh, it doesn't really matter. Let's push on. So, uh, like all prisoners will be released and all this and that. So like he starts spouting this craziness and then runs off. So the devil walks off, and so this woman is just kind of looking, and she's like, "Oh, like that was some good whatever it was, some of that." You know what I'm saying? So we have the devil that's just kind of like going out of here, like, "Yeah, I don't give a about any of this. Like, I don't care about this anymore. I'm just gonna go on and do my mission." So we have the devil, and here's the thing that doesn't make sense. How is it that all these priests and how is it all of a sudden all these guys know exactly, like right off the bat, fairly quickly who the devil is? Doesn't really make sense to me. Like you would think that that would take a long stretch of time. They would take like weeks for them to be able to figure out who anybody is to even be possessed, let alone be the devil. And it seems like these guys figure it out right away, and it makes no sense. But whichever. Bob's your uncle. So maybe he's not. I don't know. Maybe you don't have an uncle. That's pretty sad. So now back on to where I was going with here. So we have Jericho and possibly Chicago, possibly in this private security. And so there's a lot of money being thrown into this private security, even to the point where they have this like helicopter, and I'm like, man, they're sparing no expense for this guy. So Jericho is taking this Wall Street guy, the devil, to his job, and all of a sudden they're kind of like looking around. They're trying to see if they can spot any snipers or anything of that means. And so Arnold, of course, is going on and telling them, hey guys, we're exposed, and that this guy's going to start making his way into his business. So all of a sudden we find out this homeless man is to be on this fire escape, and he is to have a weapon. And so they're like, hey, like that guy, like you guys are wrong, go on and get that guy. So they go on and they start chasing this guy, and he starts running off. And so Jericho is flagging down this chopper after Jericho was to push this Wall Street guy back into this vehicle for them to scramble and evacuate out of here, for Jericho to get shot in the chest, and he's wearing this bulletproof vest, and Chicago is very relieved that Jericho is to remember, and then he calls him a wuss. They're like, hey man, like come on, like get up, like we got to go after this guy. So Jericho and Chicago are now on this helicopter as they run to kind of get to this helicopter. And so now they're on rooftop. And so Jericho is trying to get the chopper to get down to where this guy is. And the chopper is like, no, there's too much on that roof. Like, I don't want to risk it. And so Jericho is like, well, then I'm just going to go on and and have a thing of rope and just kind of zip line down and try to grab this guy. So, and have this chopper kind of get as low as he possibly can. So, now we have the helicopter that's swinging Jericho to go after this homeless person. And this homeless person is deciding, since he has nowhere else to run, that he's just going to run off and jump off this roof. Where, of course, Jericho is to catch him midair, and then this guy is to whip out this gun. Jericho is now fiddling with not only this homeless man, but also this gun, and try to wrestle him with it. So Jericho and this homeless man are to, of course, drop here well, like the homeless man is to like fall through this thing and smash through this kind of newsstand with newspapers, and he just kind of gets up and just kind of just runs it off, and Jericho is to drop and then kind of run after him. So this leads both Jericho and this homeless man to get to, I think, this subway like station. And so the homeless man is telling Jericho that 1,000 years has ended, and that like he's coming back, and like the world will end, and all of this stuff, all this rigmarole. So Jericho is having to deal with this guy, having to try to figure out how to not kill him. And so Jericho is shooting his legs. As this guy is to whip this gun out, Jericho just shoots the guy's legs. And so this guy drops. And so the priest, one way or the other, is to die here. And so Jericho finds out that this homeless man is a priest, and he's like, okay, this is weird. So we have Jericho that grabs this guy's wallet and is to go to this guy's bar, which is to lead him to go to this guy's home address. So Jericho is to go to this bar, talk to the bartender, and this leads him to this place that they naturally assume is condemned. So they're thumbing through this guy's stuff, and that leads them to this picture of possibly Christine. And it also leads them to a number of different like very weird things, like this guy who had written about 1,000 years has come, and like wishing that he would have never been born, and like all of this stuff because of this prophecy. And I guess all of this is from the actual good book in the number 27. And Chicago's like, well, yeah, like I guess that weirdly ends in some like football score or something like that. So Jericho really didn't understand what that meant, but later on he goes and finds this Bible and is to actually find the like where that comes from, and he read the whole passage. So we have them have a picture, and all of a sudden both Jericho and Chicago are met by these NYPD guys and this detective Marge Francis, who is on this case trying to work this. And so we have both Jericho and Chicago are not going to talk to NYPD about anything. They're just going to continue to be a step ahead. So Jericho and Chicago have no clue what this girl's name is, and so like, yeah, like we don't know like where to go next with this. So really what they go on and they do next is Jericho is decide, well, since this guy is a priest, maybe I should just go on and talk to another priest. That makes a lot of sense, like the kind of priest that is to kind of be local or nearby and maybe see if this guy knows anything. So we have, of course, Jericho that speaks with Father Kovac, and really, like, that leads Jericho really nowhere, or really just leads, of course, Father getting to know this Jericho guy and asking if he is to have any religion in him, and so on and so forth. Just kind of asking, it's like, well, like, shouldn't you start to brush up on that soon? So, especially if you're here. And so, like, Jericho mentions, like, well, like I have a reasoning for not wanting to believe in God, because God was to have an argument with me, deciding that it was time to take my wife and child, and I decided that like it wasn't time. So like we find out that this guy is heavily grieving for the loss of his family, and later on in the film we find out exactly how that all plays out in a very interesting like fashion. So, and I know I'm kind of like I'm combining events together at some points with interactions of these characters, because at some points in time you have characters that are to consistently see one another, and it always gets confusing. So I know that this event probably happens later on in the movie, especially when Arnold is to mention about the whole like wife and daughter thing. But I'm mentioning it now, and a lot of people going like, "Wait a minute, that's not how exactly the movie happens." I'm just saying it now to get it out of the way. Anyways, pushing on. So, further on in the movie. So, Christine. Christine is to be going on this subway, and I'm going to jump all over the place, so it is what it is with this review. So, Christine is on this subway, and she is to all of a sudden talk with this other subway rider, and this subway rider has this kind of weird kind of dreadlock like hair. I don't know the exact kind of weave of hair, so correct me if I'm wrong. Like very like white colored hair here. So we have Christine, who gives this guy money and he still won't go away. Christine's like, "Hey, I gave you money, like shoo, go away now." And the guy's like, "Well, no, because he's gonna find you and he's gonna F you." And Christine's like, "What are you talking about?" And this guy just goes on and keeps repeating this thing over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden, this guy starts to break like glass, falls on the ground, repeating the same whole thing. And Christine is realizing that she's hallucinating again. And so Christine is to rush on home and is to want to go on and talk to her therapist, that is, of course, to have been that same doctor that was to have stabbed that rattlesnake and put blood into her body, trying to calm Christine down and like trying to tell her it's like, well, hey, like all of this is all in your mind, like everything is okay. So Christine, of course, to get comforted by her stepmother, because her biological mother was to have been killed, because of course they were, because it makes a lot of sense to just go on and have this girl get adopted, so that way she can live this very this great life that of course is to be nurtured by the nurse or the other doctor woman that we also see was a part of this whole like cult thing, to get Christine to become this child that is to be prepared for the devil. So we of course have Christine that is to go on and start to get her workout on, and is going and doing this uh, this whole workout routine. And so she's going to go to this this shower. Come to find out, there is to of course be a guy who was killed in this shower, and now Christine is just kind of running around, scrambling around. I think it might have been a tub or a shower, doesn't really matter. So Christine is now running around her apartment because there are guys after her. Christine does not realize whether or not that these guys are good guys or bad guys, and we'll get to that in a second because we have a little bit more story to tie into this film. So we have this homeless man that, of course, Jericho was to take down. And like I said, this guy is to eventually get killed off within this movie. That's kind of what I alluded to, but I didn't say exactly how because I'm going to get to that now. So the devil is to go on and find this preacher and is to talk to him in this hospital. Weirdly enough, this detective, Marge, was to tell Jericho that there was no way that Jericho could have actually talked to this guy because his tongue was cut off. And we found this guy had cut his own tongue in his own place, and we found that in one of the parts of his place, as well as this thing with Christine's picture in it. So, but it seems that the devil is able to talk to this preacher, and so the devil is wanting to kill this guy off because it's either the devil is to try and take down someone that is to be after him, and so that's what's going on here. I said that in a very odd way, but anyways. So when Jericho and Detective Marge are kind of coming in to question this guy again, and they're like, well, how can we question a guy that can't say anything? And Jericho's like, well, he can write things down. So, like, it seems like he can write on walls so he can tell us what's going on. So, when they go on and they meet this preacher, he seems to be not being able to talk because he's now on a ceiling, dead. So, they look at this guy's chest, and there's a bunch of like kind of knifed in markings that are to say that like the same stuff that of course he had been saying before about the 1,000 years has ended, and there is something about Christ in New York. And Jericho is like, wait a minute, Christ in New York, maybe there's something about that. Maybe there's some kind of name matching that is to match with the girl that we're looking for. So maybe it's Christine, maybe it's Chris, maybe it's something to do with York. So they look up every combination of possible names, and bingo, they end up finding Christine, and they find out where she lives. So Jericho and Chicago make it to Christine's place, and we find Jericho and Chicago who are outside this building with a armor of sorts that is to be chucked out a window, and they're like, okay, what's going on? We gotta figure this out. We gotta see what's going on all up in here. So Jericho and Chicago are now breaking in to go on and figure out what's going on. They're having to shoot these guys who we end up finding out later are actually the good guys of this. They're to be called the Vatican Knights, and so it seems like they are like on the good side weirdly, but they're wanting to go through like awful means to go and try to save the world, where it seems that one of these monks are to, of course, have a blade to Christine and want to kill her. So this prophecy, there is no way for it to become true. So this monk is to give this girl the last rites and is to have this knife kind of waving high, and Christine is to be able to push this guy off of her, and then is to use certain items in her house to dodge this knife to come flying at her, which I'm like, good for her. So we have Chicago, we have Jericho that are making their way through here, and taking all of these guys down. And so we have Christine's stepmother that arrives and is thanking Jericho in Chicago for making their way here. And so now all the police are coming, and they've called them, and like they're filing all the reports and everything like that. So now Jericho is just kind of lingering around. Now that he has Christine, he's trying to come up with some kind of connection here. He's trying to think of how, like, possibly both Jericho and Christine could be connected somehow. Jericho starts thumbing through Christine's stuff and is to find this jewelry box that is to have been the exact same as his daughter, because he is to still have it and listen to it, and it still makes him cry and it still makes him sad. But yeah, it's the same thing. So he's like, hey, like my daughter used to have like a jewelry box just like this. Christine's like, really? Like, did you go through all of your daughter's stuff and try to pick through all of it? And Jericho's like, well, no, like, I'm just trying to find the connection here of this case. I don't know why all these Vatican Knight guys, which Jericho didn't know is the Vatican Knights. Like, eventually he goes on and is to grab this book and is starting to thumb through it and is to like figure out the connection. And then Jericho is to bring this back to Christine to tell him what he found out through this book that is conveniently at Christine's home. So, but yeah, so Jericho is looking for a connection. And at one point, we have Christine with this apple, and she cut it in half, and all of a sudden, she's looking at it, and she sees this wild hallucination. And Christine is freaking out, and Jericho is like, man, like, that freaked me out too. I saw what you saw. And because Christine's like, well, yeah, I had this mental like problem, like I'm seeing this hallucinations, and Jericho's like, no, I saw it too. So Christine is like, really? And so like they're like, wow, like I guess there's kind of some weird connection here. So Jericho has decided to go off and after kind of talking to Christine and trying to get to know her and whatever, Jericho goes off and just read this book and just to start to thumb through it. And then Jericho comes back to talk to Christine and say that these guys are actually on the good side. They're the good guys. And like they're working with Pope and the Vatican and whoever to just kind of rid evil. And Jericho's like, okay, that seems very weird. So the devil, of course, to become very impatient because the devil is to go on and meet with that doctor who is to be supposedly Christine's therapist and is to immediately go there to talk to this guy about like, hey, where's the progress on this? Where's the timetable? Like, come on, like you guys should have easily had this girl like prepared to like just have me take her, and it doesn't quite work out that way because we have it where Mabel, who is Christine's stepmother, isn't really willing to take Christine right now and bring her right to the devil because she's kind of worried that Christine's life may be at risk. So we have the devil that is to go on and sleep with this therapist, or I'll call him head priest because that's what his title is in IMDb. And so the devil goes on and sleeps with the head priest's both wife and child, and then weirdly like he consumes them and goes on and like pushes them both together, and then I guess is to consume the head priest's wife. And so when Jericho and Christine are talking about the whole like the Vatican Knights thing, that's when Mabel is to realize that the jig is up and that Mabel is going to have to go on and try to take down Jericho here because Mabel doesn't want Christine to be handed over to these priests to try and stop this whole thing. So Mabel is trying to uh, take down Jericho here. And here's the thing that I'm thinking about in this movie. I'm like, so we have honestly Arnold in this film that is to be like clocked by like just some like old lady, technically, a girl named Mabel. And then he further goes on into this movie and then is to get like beaten the crap out of by everybody in the neighborhood that just kind of comes with their pitchforks and their weapons of choice, just beating the crap out of Arnold. I'm like, man, they kind of like demasculate this character, but still, like, when really looking at it, like, we have like Arnold's character Jericho here that's just kind of caught off guard or is to be outnumbered, and so like it has to make sense. Like it's a guy against an army kind of thing, and like he's just kind of like really just kind of out of his normal like bubble of being prepared for a fight because these fights are kind of coming out of nowhere. So anyways, so at one point we have Arnold fighting out Mabel, which leads to Mabel, of course, getting some glass within her body, and her place is to start to catch on fire because we have the devil who is to show up at Christine's place and is to realize Chicago is out in this van, and so the devil is assigned to take a piss, and all of a sudden this urine stream is to start to be a gaslighting to explode Chicago's van that he is in. Well, kind of technically he gets out of the van and he is like right next to there to where he's like he just explodes with being right next to this location, and there seems to be a number of other cop cars that explode as well, I guess. Cop cars that are watching over Christine's place. So the devil is to slowly but surely walk through these flames to tell Christine, it's like, hey Christine, like I'm here for you, like, and we have Christine who is to know this guy. He's to like be familiar with her, and so Jericho needs to know why. So Jericho and Christine make their way to try to get out of this place, and they do. And so now they go off, and Jericho's like, well, hey, like, you know that guy. How do you know that guy? And Christine's is to say, it's like, well, you know what? This is going to sound a little weird, but I've been dreaming about this guy for my whole entire life. And he always tries to seduce me, and he always tries to, like, he always tries to get with me. So, like, I fantasized about this guy my entire life because I didn't know anything different. And so, if this guy is to go on and try to get with me, like, I may not be able to restrain myself, or I won't be able to not give in to him because, like, he is my dream guy, technically. And Jericho's like, okay, I completely understand that. I get that. So, Jericho is to decide that like there's only one other person that he can trust at this point, and that of course is Father Kovac here. So Jericho is to hand Christine over to Father Kovac, and So we have a moment where like Father Kovac is just saying like, hey, like we can take care of her now, and like you can go on and do whatever. Like we're gonna be able to easily like take care of her until this time is over. So Jericho, like you can go off, and Jericho's like, well, no, like I don't know if she's gonna be really all that trusted because you guys are just telling me that like you're going to beat this guy with faith, and I would much rather trust my gun than trust your books. Like, I'm sorry, this is just not going to work. So Jericho is telling Christine here, it's like, well, hey, like, how about you go with me? I'll continue to protect you. Like, I thought, like, we can have these guys try and do something here, but it seems like all they are saying is like, well, we're just going to rely on our books, we're going to rely on our faith, and, like, that's going to get us through. And Jericho's like, no. So the way in which that Christine is looking at Jericho, Christine is like, well, hey, I'm gonna try and go along with these guys. Like, it's not that she doesn't trust Jericho, it's just that she wants to like see like where this goes. And Jericho's like, oh, okay, all right. So Jericho leaves, but he knows where Christine is at least. So Jericho goes off to his place, and we have the devil that is to, of course, make his way into Jericho's place without a key, without anything. And the devil is to tell like Jericho, it's like, hey, isn't it weird that I just kind of popped into your place without a key or anything like that? Isn't that creepy? Ooh, ah. Like, and Jericho's like, yeah, just get to the point. What are you here for? So the devil is like, well, hey, like, how about I go on and like give you anything that you've ever wanted? Like, you realize that I am the devil. Like, you realize I can give you anything. Like, what do you want? Like, I can go on and make your like your dream, whatever your dream is, come true. And so immediately we have the devil who's like, I know what you want. So we have the devil having this Christmas tree come up and have his daughter that's in this tub, and uh, Jericho's wife is to come in and try to like towel down her daughter, and we of course have Jericho here who's like, oh my god, like my wife and my daughter, like this is crazy. That they're alive. Like, how could this be? So, and I'm trying to like find the names here. Amy and Emily. There we go. So, Amy, of course, is the daughter because I've seen her on something else, and I think it was that or the God, still standing. No, I could probably look it up right now. Uh, yeah, still standing. Oh my god. Just the knowledge in this brain that just kind of pops out bizarrely, and it makes no sense of how I remember any of this garbage. It just like fuses in there just somehow. And I'm like, how do I even remember any of this? And so Emily is to be, of course, Arnold's wife. So we have Jericho that is just seeing his family. He's like, oh my god, like this is great, and like everything is to be back the way it was, like as if like nothing ever happened. And then the devil is like, well, like I can also like take it away from you, just like God did. And so all of a sudden we now have like a bunch of gang or a bunch of thug guys like bashing through this door, and they're kind of making their way through the house as the wife and the daughter are kind of running off into this room to, sadly enough, get killed by a number of these thugs. Arnold is blasting these bullets to hit nothing, to hit air. Arnold tries to jump to try to grab one of these men, and instead he just flies into this Christmas tree. It's Christmas tree. Jingle All the Way, but also, The Running Man, where the one guy who is Dynamo, like, we just had it where, like, Arnold kept calling him, "Hey, Christmas tree!" And it was like, okay, like, all right, goofy. So I don't know why I have to say, like, Christmas tree. I don't know why I have to say it that way, but I guess that's my Arnold accent, because heaven forbid you sound more like this. Anyways, pushing on. So, probably the same accent. Probably was, anyways. Pushing on. So, he can't do an Arnold accent. Anyways, pushing on. So, it always has to sound like that when you're like sounding like Arnold, as like you have to go like as if you're Conan O'Brien doing an Arnold Schwarzenegger accent. Because that's what it sounds like for me. Pushing on. So Arnold is to go through this room, is to realize that his family is again gone, and so the devil is just telling. It's just telling Jericho here, it's like, well, hey, like, I didn't take this from you, he did. And, like, Jericho was trying to do the right thing, and in not wanting to take dirty money to kind of to seal or keep him quiet. And so these guys decided to go after his family and kill them off, so that way this guy would get the message. So the devil is just telling Jericho here, it's like, well, hey, like God is the worst, like, underachiever, and anytime that it seems that like something is to go good, it's God's will. Or when something is to go bad, it's like God moves in mysterious ways. Like, basically giving this guy credit for probably doing jack crap nothing at the end of all of this. To just be like, well, hey, like, we're just gonna say that he's, like, great and all this and that, and even though really at sometimes it's like, man, like, wiping out a number of just like things that are to also be like fought over and whatever all over, like, his name also, like, we have to see kind of the double side of the sword of things, but that doesn't go into this full-on movie, and I don't want to get very a religious debate because I don't care. I just don't. Whatever. Hey man, I'm going to debate about this because you said this and I don't believe that at all. Blah, blah, blah. It's a movie. It's not a debate. It's a movie. It's a review. It is what it is. I'm sorry I even mentioned it because it's like, oh well, I don't feel that whatsoever. I could feel the exact same and not really care. It is what it is. Brr. Pushing on. Why even go into it for so long? Why even keep bringing it up? I don't. Moving on. So finally, Arnold, or Jericho here, character name, Jericho is to go on and be upset, to really just realize that he's probably not going to get what he wants at the end of this because he's just some bug to be crushed, because the devil is really just tell him that and tell him the real truth here. So Jericho instead is like, no, and then he punches into the mirror, and that's when he goes on and has this really cool line that Arnold is to say here, where he's like, you're nothing compared to me, like, you're a choir boy. And so like we just have the devil that's like, you know what, I've taken up far too much time dealing with you, and I'm done with this. So the devil goes and grabs Jericho and is to put him through this window, and the devil is wanting Jericho to put this in perspective, to see all the little people that are underneath him before he's going to fall here, and have the devil say that every single one of those people are all ants. They're going to be crushed soon, and that even Jericho is not going, even if Jericho was to give in to the devil, there's no way that the devil is going to give him what he wants. It's just not going to happen. So we have the devil who drops Jericho, and Jericho is now hanging on to this window, and the devil is now like booting Jericho's hands to make him want to almost fall even more, to where now the devil can give like a bargaining chip to Jericho, to just be like, well, hey, just kind of say the word and I'll save your life right now. Just take my hand and like come with me. And so Jericho's like, okay, sure, like I'll take your hand. So, and we kind of have like the Superman 2 thing going on, where Jericho is to take this guy's hand, but it's kind of like a very outreach thing. And so Jericho is to go and grab the devil and chuck him out this window for him to fall to his death. So Jericho then goes on is to go into his place and is to put a towel on his hand. All of a sudden, now Chicago is knocking at Jericho's door. And Jericho is very suspicious about all this, so he has to go on and shoot Chicago in the arm to see if it's really Chicago or not. He's like, yeah, like you shot me in the arm. He's like, it's just a scratch wound. It's just a scratch. And like, no, you freaking shot me. So it's like, ah, oh, shut up, you wussy. So Chicago is asking Jericho, it's like, well, hey, like, what's the plan here? What's the next thing? And so Jericho is saying that he feels that they need to go on and take Christine from this place that she's at, because he doesn't feel that she's going to be safe. If bullets doesn't even work on the devil because the devil immediately healed, like what good is anything going to do? So Chicago's like, well, that's great. Well, where is she at? And we'll pick her up. So Jericho is to mention to Chicago where this girl is at, because Jericho trusts Chicago. So Jericho goes on to this church and is to meet up with Christine again. And we find out that Father Kovac is to call his higher ups, and the higher ups just send the Vatican Knights again, and they want to go through this procedure again to kill this girl off. And I'm like, come on, Father Kovac, really? So now we just have the devil that is to make his way into this church. And we had Father Kovac that was mentioning, oh, like the devil is not going to come in here, and like the devil doesn't know what's going on in this church, and like we should be like okay for now, and this and that. And so the devil just kind of strolls in here. It's like, like, what did you think? Like, I was gonna start bursting into flames if I come in here? Like, come on. So the devil goes in here, and we start to have these Vatican Knights that are to have this like cross that is to be like put with the devil, and the devil is like, seriously? So he like takes the cross and just stabs the guy in the head, and so the devil is going to go on and start killing all these guys off. And so Christine is to run around where the devil is um, to get out of here so she can go and have Chicago pick her up, while Jericho is thinking like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna go into this car too and we're just gonna get out of here. Yeah, not so much. But let's go back with the devil. So the devil goes on and he starts snapping necks and cashing checks with all these Vatican Night guys. And we have this cardinal where he like completely just like Linda Blair freaking snaps the neck all the way around. And I'm like, heck yeah, craziness. So the devil is killing all these monks, all these Vatican Knights, because he's just like, God, like, you guys are just like as bad as me, thinking that the only way you can solve things is at the end of a sword. Like, really? So, and plus also, like, these guys are a nuisance that the devil, of course, wants to eliminate, as well as the devil just likes to eliminate just anybody or anything in his way. So, even the point of us sadly having Father Kovac here who dies. So, or no. Father Kovac, I think, scrambles off as a lot of these other like priests are getting killed, because Father Kovac eventually is to retrieve Jericho after he is to get freaking beaten up the way he does. So Jericho. Jericho's out in this alley, and we start seeing all of this like lynch mob that is gonna come in here and start clocking Jericho, as Jericho is trying to put up some kind of defense as if he's like freaking Keanu Reeves from The Matrix, but things aren't going all that well. Jericho is trying to sweep the leg, trying to knock down a couple of guys, but it seems that guns have gotten out of his hands, and so, like, I guess without guns, he is not all that good. So, Jericho starts trying to take down some people, grab some items so he can defend himself, but eventually the numbers get far too much, and it gets where the devil has decided to crucify Jericho and hold him on this cross, and now the devil is mentioning to Jericho, it's like, I want you to watch as this like whole world like burns down around you. So Father Kovac is to retrieve Jericho and is to put him in bed and is to have him like wake up before it gets far too late. And so Jericho wakes up and he's like, "Well, what time is it?" It's like it's 7 at night. So they only have a number of hours before. I'm like, when is the devil like? Is the devil just seemingly just like waiting for the last ditch minute? Like, come on, devil! Like, hurry this up! Like, the devil was in such a rush, but now he's gonna slow down and just marinate on this last, like, ditch minute to just go on and get this woman? I don't believe that. It seems kind of goofy to me. So, Jericho is to wake up here and is to make it to his office to find out where Chicago's car is, because he was, I guess, to possibly either have a tracker on it, or maybe all these guys have trackers on it, and so he knows where this car is. So Jericho has this to lead him after he used to kind of armor up and get all these big massive guns and all these things to do his job. Jericho goes to this abandoned theater, which he makes it further and further into this place to find that there's some blind man that is to ask Jericho, as he's taking a whiff of him, like, it seems like you have a lot of hate and vengeance in your heart. Like, oh, okay, go ahead and go. Go ahead and pass. So Jericho makes it further and further into this abandoned movie theater, and is to go on into the place that it seems like they're putting forth this ceremony. So we had a part where Jericho was to be with Christine, and Detective Marge was to get killed, and both Jericho and Christine were to run off. But the devil was to resurrect Detective Marge here to kind of use her as to like continue on having her serve the devil. So Detective Marge is noticing that Jericho is in this environment, and she's further and further trying to find out where he is. And so they start to put this ceremony together, and the devil is consistently telling Christine, it's like, well, hey, like I'm here to love you. Like I'm not here to like hurt you or anything like no. Like all this is to be like for your benefit and everything. So we of course have Jericho, who is to interrupt this whole ceremony by guns ablazing, and Jericho then takes out anybody who is to be a threat of his. So we have Christine and we have Jericho running off again, which is to now lead to there being a subway match between the devil and Jericho, and Jericho is kind of like trying to think whether or not if the devil is dead, but all of a sudden the devil starts reaching its hands through this subway. So we have this consistent fear that the devil is still coming no matter what, and so they have to go on and create this big massive train explosion and train crash or subway crash to try and like take down the devil or to at least slow him down. And so both Christine and both Jericho are to try to get away from this place where the devil was. And so the devil is now to give up his body to then just kind of fly around in his spiritual form to find the next person to inhabit. So now both Jericho and Christine are to just find the most like nearby church. So the no, I don't think I'll get into it. Uh, Thomas. Thomas was the preacher that I think was to get his tongue cut out. Uh, yeah. So hopefully that is correct. So let's move on. So Jericho and Christine are at this church, and Jericho is to blast his gun into this church, just telling everybody just get out of here, because a war is brewing. Jericho is to like start arming up his guns and whatever, but he all of a sudden is to see all of these angels here, Jesus technically, Michael, Gabriel, whoever the heck, everybody who is to be some kind of statue-esque like character, and so we finally just have it where Jericho here is to throw his gun aside and just like, you know what, God, like, just give me the strength. Like, come on, like, just help a brother out. So, and we find that Jericho is to finally just toss his gun aside and believe. So this is kind of like almost like a Spawn moment where, like, Spawn throughout most of that movie was to just be guns ablazing, and then he decided to like within himself just kind of believe in himself and the weapons that he is to provide within his own self to defeat the technically devil at the end of the movie. Kind of clown, but also devil in a way. Moving on. So, what happens here is now the devil is to become this big monstrous thing that is to scare Jericho here. And so this big monstrous thing just flies within Jericho and is now trying to possess him. Now Jericho is getting flung all over the place. Jericho and the devil are struggling between one another, just kind of hold on. So we now have to assume that Jericho is now possessed by the devil. And so Jericho is now calling for Christine, telling her that it's all over, everything is fine. And Christine believes Jericho and's like, okay, great, like we can get out of here now and all of this will be over. And Jericho's like, well, yeah, it'll all be over soon. And so Jericho goes on to get to the front of this church, is to, I guess, rip a certain part of Christine's clothes to get ready for the moment of which that we have Jericho taking or the devil taking over, and of course before like Jericho or the devil is to go on and he has to say kind of one like disparaging remark to Jesus and God and all of that. All of a sudden, Jericho is to retake control and is to tell Christine to run. So Jericho is to decide to just kind of turn like and try to take control. And so when the devil was to come into this church, he was to knock a bunch of things over, knock over a bunch of these statues, all of these kind of glass ceiling and all of this stuff, break all of these things. And for one of these statues, one of the statues was to have this big, massive sword. And so Jericho is to see this big, massive sword, and so he jumps right onto the sword to now have to kill himself, but is to have really the devil not be able to have enough time to find some other person to jump into and possess to get with Christine. There just isn't enough time. And so we finally have it where like the good guys are to win. And we also have Jericho, who is to obviously die here, and he is to see like his wife and his daughter as like spirits or angels or whatever, as if this is like the end of Gladiator. And Christine is to tell Jericho thank you, as he of course is to pass on. So Jericho dies. Christine probably just like waits for the police to come and is to tell her story and then get the heck out of there. I'm sure like get out of Dodge or something. Because who knows? Maybe there's another prophecy that she's going to be forced to do at some point. I don't think there was ever going to be planned for End of Days 2. Are they going to plan for the year 4000? I don't know. But anyways, I think I'm just going to get out of here. This review is probably far too long anyways. So if there's anything that I forgot about, because I'm sure there's a million things that I forgot about, because there's a lot of details within this one, let me know in the comments below. This one was a long stretch of a review. I apologize, but otherwise, I'm just going to go on and just kind of doing just kind of the lengths of which that I do, because I'm just going to go on and just keep doing reviews. Just kind of I'm going to see what happens with whatever. So rolling the dice for whatever day, because there's some days where I just feel like I want to go on and do this. And so that's what happens. If by pure chance, like a lot of people are like, yeah, I love this movie, then great. But like there's also some times where I just want to kind of give myself a break and just find a good movie and just enjoy that for the day. So anyways, bye everybody. Bye everybody.